Okay, we have video. Okay, so let's this is our second attempt. This is our second attempt at episode 108, I think it is, of the Tim Weichselbaum Show. There is some audio that was recorded. We started so hot and bothered that we didn't kind of check to see that it was recorded. It's a very bad mistake to make. It's
not.
The worst mistake you could make during a podcast is to not record it.
Well,
but we had audio. But anyway, now we're back. So anyway, this is the start that you're going to see. But we're already off the rails. We're already launching into topics. Yeah. So anyway, do you want to introduce yourself again?
So yeah, okay. Like last time I introduced myself, and it was a weird introduction. So why don't you introduce me?
Okay, so this week we have a return guest, an old friend, comedian friend of the show. I'm not a comedian, but he's a friend who happens to be a comedian, and he's back for his return appearance on the Tim Weichselbaum Show. His name is Jack Horner.
Yeah.
And his credits include Kill Tony. He killed on there multiple times, and you should know
Kill
about
Tony, yeah. That's the only thing I would have done that anybody listening to this would have seen me in. I love comedy. I love making people laugh. I feel weird talking about it. I don't feel weird talking about it with you because we know each other from the scene, but I feel weird bringing it up and people finding out I'm a comic. And I'll dive into what I was talking about a second ago, but do you have that thing where you tell people that you've dabbled in comedy and then they try to make you laugh they try to make you laugh and it's awkward?
They try to make you laugh.
Yeah, they want you to think they're funny.
Okay.
I was attending this church, right? And the pastor said he recognized me from Kill Tony, which already made me feel kind of weird because it's like a church, you know what I'm saying? But he would crack a joke during his sermons, and he would look at me and here's the thing, I'm not a laugher. My dad's a reserved person, he just doesn't laugh, and I picked it up from him. So I'll think something's funny, right? But I just don't laugh, And then I fake laugh, and people think I'm being sarcastic.
I have that same problem.
Yeah, I want to be polite, but then you do what you think is polite, and that just makes it more impolite.
Dude,
yeah.
I wish I could just let my real personality out in public, because that's kind of what it is I laugh, it's not loud, but I still like to laugh.
And that's also a problem when I'm doing podcasts. If I know it's going out somewhere, it's I find you to be a funny guy. I genuinely do. And you might say something I think's funny, but if I'm on a podcast, I'll do the
yeah, that's not good.
But it's an
I
instinct.
Do that too.
It's an instinct. Yeah. But anyway, so I apologize if I fake laugh during this podcast. I mean it. If I fake laugh, I do genuinely find it funny. I just don't want to be awkward.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Okay. But
I do that too. I don't think I make no. I'll make it. I don't know if I fake laugh, but I certainly will show that I appreciate. I'll smile. I'll give a glimmer of support.
Yeah.
But I'm not a good laugher, yeah.
Yeah, and did you ever feel like that actually makes you a better comedian in terms of analyzing comedy because you can actually observe it more and you're not getting sucked into it?
I would think so.
Yeah.
You have to have a very high threshold for as a comic. If you find everything funny, if you have a super low threshold, then you're probably not. How does that work? But at the same time, you also have to be able to have a big appetite for anything. The better the comedian is, the more things they could find funny about any given topic. So you do have to have a huge appetite.
I thought of a really interesting idea last night just for an open mic. I don't know if it'd be good or just a show maybe, right? Because I saw that they were doing a show at the Alamo Drafthouse, right? And it turns out that there's just a stage somewhere in the theater and they just do it on a stage.
Have you not been there?
I've been there.
Yeah, they have a stage,
Yeah, I haven't seen the stage.
It's cool. Yeah, it's a bar it's its own room that's just a stage in a bar.
That's cool, but I was thinking a good idea for a comedy show, actually show it up on the screen. Because I feel like
I had an idea.
But if people are seeing someone bigger than them, actually literally bigger than them, it's more immersive.
That'd be cool.
And they would have more respect for the performer and be more likely to laugh. And maybe you could show it simultaneously to live stream it to a bunch of different screens.
Yeah, I had an idea like that.
Yeah,
it'd be very hard. A lot of logistics.
It's kind of idea that a lot of people have probably thought of, but it's just how come I've never seen that?
I had an idea that was just where you filmed people in the green room, and then the joke, or there's just watching them make each other laugh in the green room is part of the show. And then you vote on who's funniest from the audience, and then who's ever funniest gets to do a set in the real showroom where the audience actually is, but there's a screen where they're seeing what's happening in the green room.
Whoa.
So it'd be like transitioning from offstage comedy to onstage comedy.
Yeah.
That's a very complicated idea. Like, it'd be real-time voting. That'd be insanely complicated, but it'd be fun.
Yeah, and I think that like comedy is something with such a devoted fan base that could really develop a strong
It'd
following.
be kind of like Kill Tony, where anybody would be open to sign up, and there'd be like a pool of people that get join the green room conversation, and then there'd be a moderator, like, okay, shut up, you're talking. It'd be like a podcast, of course, but also there's an audience.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. I don't want to keep talking about this because what we talked about last night was actually
I don't either.
fascinating. I'm sorry,
This
man.
is like a 2-year-old idea. So
I mean,
it's just an idea.
That's a good idea. I just don't want to get down the comedy rabbit hole.
Because comedy is a rabbit hole, but it's fine.
I'm sorry because we were both talking about.
If you don't want to talk about comedy, I'm down to not talk about comedy.
We can talk about it
Fuck
again.
comedy, dog.
But because what you were saying last night was so fascinating to me, and I think it's just like also more enlightening. You know, like honestly, like I feel like one of the reasons I've had some success in comedy is because I don't like it that. You know what I'm saying? To a degree, I really don't. I love making people laugh, and I love the comedians, but I don't watch a lot of comedy specials. Anyway, I said I wouldn't talk about comedy.
Well, I get okay. Actually, that rings a bell because I saw you on some other podcast a year ago or something, and you have different opinions. Yeah, you have.
Yeah. I was also on the William Montgomery podcast. Credit.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. But you were on that too, weren't
I
you?
don't think I saw you. No, I wasn't.
I've been on there, I think, 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah. The first time I was pretending to be William's girlfriend. You can't see me on camera. The second time was me, but okay. So just to give you an idea of how it went. My sister was like, "You sounded very educated," and I was like, "Oh fuck, I know I sound educated." But
are you educated? You do sound it.
Yeah. So I mean,
an insult.
No, it's well, but if you're on the William Montgomery show, I mean,
you don't want to be hearing that.
No, yeah,
it's
exactly.
Really
it's like it's kind of douchey, you know. But and then I was on there another time. But anyway, I guess I'm moderately well educated. I have a bachelor's degree. I had a B- average though. I barely graduated, and I think what it comes from though, like that whole demeanor I have of wanting to be sophisticated, is like I was in special ed classes when I was a kid. So I'm really conscientious of like sounding smart, but I don't know if I really am. Like when I talk to you, like you just seem like a really smart guy. Like my grandpa was a very bright man. Like he had a high IQ and everything like that. And I just see like a lot of those same traits like in you. It's like, oh, you're a smart person, you know? Like, and again, maybe it's just like your ability to hyper focus and you can just like.
Well, you don't got to say that because I already say that about myself on this podcast all the time. So it's just gonna come off as me tooting my own horn.
Hold on, but I feel like people should be honest about what they have to offer. You know what I'm saying? It's like
that's a good point.
You can be honest, like, hey, I'm smart, but like also for myself, it's like I'm also kind of socially awkward. I'm kind of a dweeb.
There's always
it's there's
always a handicap. that comes with that. Any gift. I'm not even saying I really have a gift. I'm not like gifted in terms of intelligence. I think I'm gifted maybe in art or something. But either way, it comes with baggage.
Yeah, and like
but like to your point. Yeah, why can't you be honest about your IQ? Or it's stigmatized. It's just intelligence is highly stigmatized only because not everybody has it.
Yeah, and I think that like, is it stigmatized, or do people kind of want to, who have high IQs, say it is because they want to kind of blame their failure on that, like people not understanding them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, people don't understand me because I'm smart, and that's why life hasn't worked out how I wanted it to.
It's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and like, I think that. Is it that intelligence is stigmatized or pseudo-intellectualism is kind of like glorified? You know what I'm saying? Like people just kind of look to people that actually aren't that smart, you know, and they kind of give intelligence a bad rap. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
pseudo-intellectualism is popular, so I guess there is a desire for like it is sought after, but since not everybody has it, it's gonna cause turmoil. And it's like that really is the most valuable resource is intelligence. So if not everybody can acquire it,
Yeah.
that is not fair. It feels not fair. And if you can't get it through education, if it's kind of innate in your DNA, that's terribly feels unfair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like life isn't fair. And it's like what you were saying a second ago. It's like with every gift, there comes a drawback. So in certain ways, it does kind of balance out, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe you're 20 IQ points lower than some other guy, but you're more likable. You have more friends. You get laid more, you know? Or you might even do better at your job. You might even get promoted faster because people like being around you, you know? Like, we talked about outliers last night just briefly, but one of my favorite parts of that book is where Oppenheimer analyzes the life of, Malcolm Gladwell analyzes the life of Oppenheimer versus Chris Langan, and there were two people with like the exact same IQ. Like,
so I actually have heard of that book. Now that you explained the premise,
but it's fascinating because
that's Outliers. Duh.
Yeah.
Of course I know it. Sorry, I thought you were talking Chris
but.
Langan.
And he just talks about how like Chris Langan's kind of a failure, you know, just in terms of like the massive intelligence he has, because he wasn't likable. Like, you know, no one wanted to be around him.
I have been studying him specifically enough to know what he's all about him. Yeah, I know his theory. I know his personality. I've interacted with him on Twitter.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, interesting.
He's easy to get a hold of.
Yeah. He, you know, I'm kind of
all he does all day is just bitch on there and send these long fucking paragraphs just bitching about Twitter itself. I'm not getting what I'm paid. He's like a boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's
So
exactly.
the IQ points are not helping him out.
No. It's basically what Outlier says. He's a grumpy dude. Like, you know,
very.
Yeah. And and I don't want to be too judgmental. It sounds like he had a hard childhood. You know, it's like fuck. I'm sure it'd be hard not to be grumpy, but I'm kind of, we keep deviating from the topic because I want to talk about Terence McKenna.
No, that's the topic.
It's
still similar.
Yeah, it's so with. Sorry, I'm going to deviate a little bit. Terence McKenna, which we talked about last night. I watched Terence McKenna's final interview. I'm having a very ADHD conversation, but anyway, and in the final interview, he talked about novelty theory, right? Which, in my understanding, was just kind of like this idea of convergence or everything coming to a convergence point.
Yes.
Okay, so. I like that.
I can't believe you actually already watched that because, that's exactly what I'm interested in right now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, of course I did, man. I wanted to be, like, informed on the podcast.
Well, it's not like it had, like, that was not a required thing to do, but that's very interesting to do because, he uses this fancy word that comes from process philosophy. Whitehead is the guy who invented that, but he took this one term from it, concretions. Yeah, when things come together, they grow together and form these more complex things that stand out in, more dense, more complicated, more complex.
So, concretions, it sounds like a word for like the crispiness of bread, doesn't it? It's like it has the red concretions. Okay, dumb point. But anyway. So, so this is one of the things I thought was fascinating. I want to start off with this, like, because this is a quote from the interview, okay? So, he talked about, he said, time is only experienced by the events which occur within it, right? So basically, it reminded me of Jung, where Jung also said that basically time isn't real. Like before we evolved or whatever, we had no concept of that. Like, you know, and this is just how we measure something, but it's still just like sort of an abstract concept. It's not like a concrete thing. And my parallel to this is when he says time is only experienced by the events that occur within it, is if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, right? Does it make a sound?
Yeah, I like that.
So basically, if we're not here to experience time, right? Then it isn't existing. It sounds like that's what he's getting at, which the interviewer challenged him on that, and I kind of agree with the interviewer.
Yeah, what did he say?
Like, so I think the interviewer basically said, well, like, time's not getting faster. Like, there's nothing happening to time, right? There's a consistent measurement, you know, and it's not changing, right? That's basically what the interviewer said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I kind of agree with him, like, time is still going to happen even if we're not around to experience it. And I guess that's sort of my thinking. So, actually, what does that mean to you?
So, I think that it is true that time is relative. That's kind of proven by general relativity. We know it is. It's all about how fast you're going. It's all about reference. Your reference point is what determines how fast it's all the same to you, but relative to other frame of references, it won't be the same. So time is not a constant thing that's flowing at the same rate everywhere. It's just not. It's all about observation. Without observation of some event to reference in relation to a previous event, what's the yardstick? We need a yardstick to measure it with, and as it turns out, when you do that, we find out it's relative.
Okay, and I just want to say, first of all, is it true that by the end of his life, Einstein no longer believed in theory of relativity?
No, it's just that he never was able to reconcile it with quantum physics or special relativity.
Okay, so special relativity.
He believed it. It was just he never finished it. It just never was finished.
So he didn't believe in the quantum realm then.
He had issues with it.
Yeah, which I mean, I just in terms of my dumb brain, I kind of do too, because it's like, if we can't observe it, right? How do we know it is?
Yeah,
it exists.
He didn't like things about it, yet he discovered he contributed to quantum physics. Like we still use his field equations for quantum physics. So he's whether he likes it or not, it's true.
Okay, and let's go back to quantum or not. I'm sorry, to Terence McKenna in that quote, right? So let's say we go extinct, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no one around to experience time. Is that going to change time at all? Or is he just basically saying that time's not real because we're not around to measure it? Like, what is he saying with that?
Yeah, it takes an experiencer for time to exist. If all humans are gone, it's got to be somebody else, something animate, something conscious has to experience time.
And then how does that tie into his novelty theory or his convergence theory? Like, I guess take that concept and kind of try to explain it if you can.
Yeah, I just think what I know about his theory is that it's pretty much that he just thinks we're headed towards more and more novelty to the point where we'll get to this eschaton is the word he uses. Yeah. Eschaton, which is the final event in the chain of time that will it'll just be so much novelty to the point where it just kind of is too much and it ends. There's a final solution to whatever puzzle is being figured. That's that in a nutshell. What my interpretation of his theory is that that's what reality is trying to do is to create the most novelty. Just head towards novelty.
Yeah, no, and I like that because it kind of points to there being...
Complexity is another word for novelty.
Yeah, it points to there being an order to things and a structure to things and a design to things.
A design, a plan, there's a purpose to it. Like
yes.
It's a pattern that's unfolding and becoming more beautiful and sensical and connected.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something where I've kind of disagreed with mainstream science on. I don't disagree with them on the facts or whatever, but when they talk about the philosophy of we're all going to the sun's going to explode in a billion years and this is all just a bunch of random BS. Okay. It's like, I'm not saying that it's my place to say that they're all wrong or that, they're not more qualified than me to make their assertions, but it's like, I don't like that idea. I like there being a purpose and a reason for things and a design to things. Like evolution, for instance, right? Like when I was in school, I was raised in Christian schools and whatnot. It's like, theory of evolution, it disproves God and it's wrong and it's evil. But if you actually think about it, saying that everything is related and has a common ancestor, like every biological organism, right? That could just as easily point to a designer. It's all about perception to me. I'm just saying there's a way to look at evolution and see an order and a design, And again, that's sort of what I liked about Terence McKenna's theory. He's kind of backing that up. He wasn't really talking about evolution, but, just the idea that in terms of there being a purpose, I really do. So I guess maybe address that or explain it more, if you want to.
The word purpose and meaning is what I'm interested in studying. Meaning itself. How do you measure that? And if there is a purpose for every molecule on the planet, if there's is there a story arc to everything? Yeah, I do kind of believe that there is. It's just we don't know it until after the fact necessarily. And there's a poetic justice that kind of is guiding, dictating or governing our trajectories. And there's just this equalizer. It seems like that is a cosmic level equalizer that anywhere in the universe, the same stories are being told. Like these religious texts are all they all have similar structures to them because there's only so many stories that are that good, and they all kind of involve similar elements to tell a really fucking whether they're true or not. I don't know. There's probably some truth in pretty much any major religion when it first came out, but then it got shifted over time and it lost some of its meaning, and so then it just then it feels less correct and okay, so we need a new that's why evolution, I do believe in evolution. Not only do I believe in evolutionary biology, Darwinism, I believe it applies to every idea too. It applies to physical, non-physical, living things, languages. Any entity evolves. Has to evolve.
And it's like, it's interesting to like look at things and see that kind of path. Like for instance, how like English comes from Latin, and if you like study Latin a little bit, like how the words are like kind of similar, and then you can see how like German and
so that now we're touching on what I'm actually authoring myself. Now so my theory that I am coming up with, my like original thing that I'm doing is based around language. It's based on this idea that language encompasses all phenomena in the whole universe. Like everything's a language. That's the psychedelic, trippy thing that I figured out.
Okay, so so when you first said like language encompasses everything, like I thought you meant that without words to describe something, how else can we kind of relate that it exists?
Kind of. That's kind of where I got the idea. It's like, if you can't describe something, how do you know it's real?
Yeah. And then that second part of what you just said, like, so are you saying like everything has a language, or like what?
Yes.
Like what? Okay.
Everything. We just don't know the word. Our definition of the word language needs to be expanded. The brain has its own definition. Neuroscience is how I just studied neuroscience, and I found out the brain actually thinks of everything as a language. It doesn't care if it's a violin, if it's a microphone. It's like, okay, what type of microphone is that? It zooms in on it, categorizes it the same way it does anything. A word, a picture. The brain doesn't really care what we label something. It has its own language that it assigns meaning to, that's built in. Everybody has their own different cognitive language in their head. That's kind of like mentalese. It's not words, it's semantics. It's how our brains map input to a specific output. That's okay. That's kind of where I'm getting at. Where I got this idea. But then I kept going. It's like, okay, so if that's how humans work, does this apply to everything? Does this apply to animals? Does this apply to even non-living things? Do they also have languages? And actually, it doesn't break down even when you're talking about non-living entities. Even atoms, you could say, have their own language, have their own native language, and then they communicate with other atoms through interactions, through other types of languages.
Okay, so I guess...
so that's where it gets metaphysical. But it's based in neuroscience.
Well, when you say metaphysical, right? Mm-hmm. I guess I kind of associate that with other unseen dimensions, like the metaphysical realm. So are you saying that it gets metaphysical because like animals have their own language, but it's not as complex, right? Like there's other things out there that are more complex, but we don't have the capacity to understand it, kind of?
Well, that's certainly the case. Both ways, up and down. Like people, animals would be lower intelligence than us, so they don't have as much degrees of freedom in the information they could process. They just can't map as much meaning as humans can. That's intelligence, But in language also is required for intelligence because you need meaning to get. Intelligence requires pattern recognition. And how do you do that without a language? I mean, you could say there's internal visual pattern mapping going on. That's still a language though, because there's patterns and there's semantics and there's syntax, even to visual stuff. Like even Anything has syntax. Like a guitar has form.
Okay.
And we recognize, okay, that's a guitar. How's that any different than recognizing the letter T? It's not. It's not any different. It's just a different abstraction for a specific other abstraction. A guitar is an abstract concept.
So, I'll play devil's advocate, right? Because like sometimes we recognize patterns that aren't there. Like we're kind of designed to see things like that. Like, I guess we're hunter gatherers, we need to be visually acute, recognize this shit.
Yeah.
So sometimes we see a dick in the clouds when there's not a dick in the clouds. Or we see Virgin Mary on a piece of toast, right?
Yeah.
Like, so like what you're kind of saying are these like patterns that exist, right? Do they really exist or don't they? You know what I'm saying?
So I could answer that. So a pattern only exists in the exact moment that it's perceived. It doesn't just exist outside of anyone's mind. They're transient. They're not permanent. There's no such thing as a permanent, ever-changing pattern. It has to be observed and recognized over and over again.
So, then do you believe in quantum physics? Because to me, that's kind of saying that other things do exist that we're not observing, right?
They are being observed, not by humans, but they're being observed by other particles, subatomic particles.
But we're observing those subatomic particles, right? We're seeing that happen.
When we interact with subatomic particles, we can only do that by sending subatomic particles. So we're not getting the full picture because we can't measure anything at a smaller, we're using the thing to measure the thing we're measuring. So it's called the measurement problem. Any system is there's no way to get an absolute reading on how heavy something is. Always subject to that measurement system. It's all relative to your measuring equipment. So that's why there's like a wave function of probabilities. They just say this is where the electron could be probabilistically.
Okay, so
you can never. And
I want to really spend a lot of time talking about what you're working on because that sounds fascinating to me, and I just want to make sure I understand it. So, how much of like what you're working on is interconnected to metaphysics? Is it about that, or is that a big part of it?
Yeah, because language isn't a concrete physical thing. It's a concept. So that's where it is based. It is metaphysics when you're talking about something that is a concept and applying it to physical things.
Okay. And, so it's mainly related to language then. Like,
I don't know if what I said is really accurate, because of course,
because it's about reality itself, and then we use language to describe it. So I guess it's more about reality, and like language is the.
I'm saying, so it is what I'm saying is like a new theory of metaphysics that language is reality. That language is the substrata of quantum physics, that physics emerges from language itself. There's a codified, the laws of physics, therefore, have to be written down somewhere.
That's how we explain reality, right? But that thing is still happening, right? Like the apple's still falling from the tree, right? Because of gravity, right? Mm-hmm. And how we explain that happening is because of language or through language. But are you saying that
you could keep going?
That only happens, like the apple falling from the tree is only happening because we're describing it?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm saying that we're describing our take on that phenomenon, but that phenomenon is itself speaking its own language.
Oh, okay.
So there's like the language of gravity. That's one language. The language of redness. If you're an apple that's red, that's a pattern. And these patterns, their interactions, is what I call a language. What governs patterns in their interactions. So yes, that's what I'm saying.
What governs patterns in their interactions? I like that.
And that covers everything. Like everything's a pattern. The whole universe is a pattern. It's just a very complex pattern, but you could say it's one so anything's a pattern, even if it's just a thread of hair, a single atom. So that's one big claim I'm making, is that everything that exists is a pattern, and the only reason that it exists is because it's being inscribed in somebody's perception.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I honestly like that sounds very interesting to me. Like, so I want to get back into like classical physics versus metaphysics, right? In that separation, right? So in your mind, like, how is metaphysics different from what we view classical physics? Like, what is the new claim it's making?
It's not empirical. It is in the realm of philosophy because we can't. It's not measurable. We can't measure. So if something is not empirical, that you can't measure it empirically, yeah, it's not going to be part of physics yet. Physics has to be mathematical for it to be considered actual physics. Metaphysics is like what kind of sub underlies classical physics.
So,
It's more philosophy.
okay, so is in
And it's
quantum
ontology too. That's the word that's more specific. It's an ontological framework.
and
Yeah.
And I asked you this last night, but metaphysics and quantum physics. So that's what quantum physics is about. Is like the explanation for metaphysics. Like they're the same, or they're basically the same
They're
thing.
totally
right?
separate.
Oh, oh, okay.
I would like to if you could merge them, that would make you the next Einstein. But no, they're totally separate. Yeah, totally separate.
But like the quantum realm is metaphysical, right?
I would
Because we can't observe it,
see.
right?
You can't say that because it's a field. Because quantum physics is a field that has hard defined rules, so it won't be called quantum physics if it's metaphysics. It's
Okay.
because if it's measurable, that would make it not metaphysics anymore. That
But-
would make it quantum. That would make it actual physics.
Okay, so quantum physics.
Metaphysics is still in the realm of philosophy.
Okay, but quantum physics is not.
No,
It's okay.
it's math.
Okay, but it's using math to describe dimensions that we can't observe, right?
Yeah, you could not you could measure them though. That it's a form of observation. There's an empirical way to predict with very accurate measure
Accuracy?
precision is the word. Precision, yeah. Same thing as that. There's math that allows you to do that. There's no math that allows you to say, what's the square root of of like an idea. That would be metaphysics. But the second you could do that and actually prove it, then it would become mainstream math.
Okay.
Like there is abstract math that does kind of let you get pretty abstract, but it still doesn't work to explain like where the universe came from. We're just not there yet.
Okay. And like to me, like when you say like we're just not there yet, like when it comes to like quantum physics, because I feel like that could all just be a bunch of woo woo. It's again, like, you know what I'm saying? Like like when I like listen to someone talk about it or lecture on it, it sounds very similar to Scientology or fucking Tony Robbins selling his secret bullshit.
There's something mysterious going on.
Yeah, and
now that I kind of gave you the preamble to explain how they're separate, I do think eventually they will be merged.
Yeah.
We will eventually be able to reconcile everything in under one framework.
Yeah, and that's what Terence McKenna was saying as well. That's his novelty theory. How do what are some things happening now that make you think that this convergence is happening? Or is that sort of where your theory came from? Are you like looking at events?
Yeah, I think since I came up with it, something that is novel, that means other people are also coming up with shit and just not talking about it, because, or at least that's what I thought when I originally got the idea. It's like, whoa, if I thought of this, that means there must be so many other people that are way ahead of me. So I keep up to date on, I am up to date on what is going on in quantum physics, AI, quantum computing. They're making progress almost every couple of weeks, So I do keep up on papers, for gravity, quantizing gravity. This is relevant to what I'm studying. They don't know that it has anything to do with language yet. See, that's where it would be crazy if this actually became mainstream, what I'm talking about, and actually is like, language is actually the missing link or the puzzle piece that we just never took that. Nobody ever really posited that, but since we know that that's how it works, yes, that might actually be relevant to get us to figuring out how to quantize gravity. how to generate gravity.
Okay, so with that, like how is this going to change like scientific disciplines? Because Terence McKenna in that video we mentioned again last interview. Go ahead and watch it, guys, if you haven't. But he talked about how like scientific disciplines, different disciplines, like don't like each other. They don't get along. They don't see how they're similar. Yeah, they're kind of separated when they really have more in common, and they should kind of like team up together more. I don't know if team up's the right word, but they should just see how much they have in common with each other. So how would your theory kind of change the scientific understanding of reality?
So it's a unifying framework that says every field under the sun is just a branch on the same tree of knowledge. It's just a language that you could call a dialect on a tree of a larger language of just all human knowledge. That's the main tree trunk. And then from there you get all these other disciplines like physics, biology, and they're separated, but of course they still are connected to reality, so they have to converge somewhere. But yeah, they're siloed because it's its own language. It gets separate. Like every language has this problem. They're very good at talking amongst themselves. Think of like any country that has like a native language. Yeah, they're great at talking amongst themselves, but that doesn't mean they get along with everybody else who doesn't speak that language. So this explains the diplomacy issues in any field.
And like, what is this something that you can like teach scientists? Like,
Sure,
what you're working on?
if it's true. I mean, if something is novel and true and better than what we have, it will be adopted. It just will take time. It takes a lot of time.
If you were going to do a lecture on this idea at a university,
I'm not anywhere close to being like Terence. Like he was. Oh man.
No, well, I mean, he was a good talker.
But go ahead.
I mean, but I feel like you might be closer to Terence McKenna than you think. But maybe not like Oppenheimer or Neil deGrasse Tyson, but Terence McKenna maybe.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson. That guy's a hack.
I mean, he's okay.
He's cool.
Yeah. So if you were going to lecture on this at a university, what subject would you pick? Like what discipline? Yeah, does this fall closest to?
Well, okay, it would be in semiotics.
Semiotics.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that mean?
It's. I only just heard about it a couple months ago. Semiotics is the study of signs and their meanings. Just pretty,
like symbology.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
It's just what happens when an animal looks at a sign and what meaning it maps to, and there's an interpretant. There's a triangle. It's pretty basic on the surface, but there's many sub-disciplines. There's neurosemiotics. There's so many subfields of it. Biosemiotics. It studies how cells talk to other cells. So it does have to do with languages. Very similar to what I'm talking about, extending the definition of language to not just humans, but everything on the planet speaks some language. So it's related to semiotics.
Okay, and like, what are some examples that you saw, like in the real world, or heard about that made you think that you were onto something? That this, you know what I'm saying?
So it started with studying the brain. I was fascinated. I was like, why is it that some people just have so much more like visual, creative abilities to just visualize stuff, and some people are totally not at all. And it's like, what is this about, like left brain, right brain, lateralization? Why the hell is it that some people just have seizures on the right side of their brain, and that leads to totally different symptoms, and if it happens on the left side? And I found out it has to do with the language center. If your language center is affected by seizures, that causes all sorts of weird symptoms. So I was just fascinated by the brain, and nothing I read was not understandable. Everything was like, I get it. I get what this means. There's neural networks in the brain that there's a signal that goes through them. It's like a computer kind of, but way more complicated. But just the theory of it, though, I get every concept about the brain.
And like when it comes to psychedelics, my understanding of how it works is like LSD specifically, like kind of messes up those like neural pathways in your brain. So like you're kind of like tasting things that you see, it's like it's sort of like messing with that perception. So is that part of what like led you down that like rabbit hole too?
Well,
like,
I did, yeah, a little bit about synesthesia. Like, okay, so yes, I wanted to know why is it that some people, here's a really concrete example that has to do with music. So perfect pitch is this ability that some people have that not everybody has. And if you don't have it, you'll never get it. But if you just have it, you have it all your life. It's just the ability to name any note by ear. And so that's a neurological ability. You can't just learn it by studying it in a book. It's neurological. It's subjective. This is subjective qualia that not everybody has, that is there, but not everybody has access to it. So I was like, why the hell is it locked away? And it just has to do with language. It's because when you're younger, as a kid, the critical learning stage is when you learn your native language. And so if you happen to listen to music and be exposed to music in the right way, that'll join the neural network that forms this native language, and it will become encrusted, permanent for the rest of your life because that's your native language. It doesn't really change once it's formed. So then I was like, okay, so what is the actual mechanism though of identifying a pitch though? What brain structures are involved? Does it have to do with mapping to other senses? I was really interested in just figuring out perfect pitch. So I learned that it has to go through the language center. It has to go through first the ears, and then it gets processed into the signal that hits this part of your brain called the Wernicke's area, and that's where it actually assigns meaning to whatever comes in. Anything, a sound, a picture, a texture, any sensory input has to go through the Wernicke's area to be assigned what it means. And so it goes through there, and if you have perfect pitch, it can do that. Okay, that's a C sharp. It just knows, okay, that sound means this. It does this for anything. When you look at a picture, whether you know it or not, there's things happening. It's like, okay, what does this mean? Your brain has to process what something means. And so I was curious, like, wait, so if it processes piano notes the exact same way as like a word, that means piano notes are words in some regard. To the brain, it's the same thing as any other language, whether it's a piano note or just a word. So I was like, wait, so does that mean the brain kind of just feels like everything is a language? And it's like, turns out, yes, even visual input has to go through the Wernicke's area and be like, okay, what does this relate to? What other ideas can we map this to? And then it goes to those neural networks that give you the actual specific meaning. It gives you more complex. But everything has to go through this signal path of semantics. And semantics means how meaning is assigned in language. And that's it. That's a simple observation I made. And I was like, wait, so... And then it kept going. I was like, wait, so the brain itself uses its own language to process meaning. Even substructures in the brain have to do that too with neurotransmitters. They have to send signals to other parts of the brain using their own native language, hoping that their message doesn't get mistranslated. Everything in the whole universe is doing that. The body is doing that. Every cell is doing that. It's sending signals, it's receiving signals, processing signals from its point of view.
So I have like a few things I want to say to that. So one, what was that part of the brain? The vertices, what was it? Vertices?
Wernicke's area is in the temporal lobe.
Yeah. I was going to call it the vertices area, but that's not the word. So the Wernicke's, that's very fascinating. And I just wanted to ask, I wonder if people with perfect pitch can sense if somebody's lying or not. You know what I'm saying? Like
they have a more acute ability to detect probably emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, like which is fascinating. I've never even like heard of that, but I want to like look into that. You know, because I bet that's like it makes sense to me. You know, like you can kind of tell if someone's like stressed out or hiding something, or you know, it's like and I definitely want to like look into that more because that's so interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna add on. They could hear on an extra dimension that most people can't.
Yeah.
So
and
yes,
I don't
more
know.
acuity.
You're a big music fan, so I'm sure you've like looked into Brian Wilson.
Yeah, huge Brian Wilson fan.
Oh, I love Brian Wilson, dude. Okay, audience listening to the
pitch.
podcast. Smile Sessions, not Smiley Smile, the crap that was released back in the 70s. Smile Sessions, 2011, and Pet Sounds. Great albums. Fascinating story, too. But
Absolutely.
his dad beat the shit out of him when he was a kid.
Yep.
And is it okay if we swear, by the way? I don't like to swear too much. But anyway, his dad beat the shit out of him when he was a kid, and he only had hearing in one ear. And then, like, for the remaining ear was, like, more acute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he had
like,
perfect pitch.
Yeah.
His brother did too.
Yeah.
This just runs in the family sometimes.
Yeah. Well, but was that the vertices there? I think it was what they say with him is like because he only had one remaining ear, he just had a better ear for music, you know. But like,
well, I don't think that's the case. He had perfect pitch, is what made him good at music. That has nothing to do with getting your ass beat. His brother had it too. Carl Wilson also had perfect pitch. He didn't have the hearing loss.
Yeah.
So it just runs in the family. It's just a genetic thing.
Oh, okay. So
that's what made him good at music.
And then, like, that's what I wanted to say to what you were saying a second ago when you talk about the development part of life, right?
True.
Right,
Yeah.
which is where you kind of develop the vertices part of your brain. And, like, it kind of sounds like it's how you were reared, but it also seems like a genetic thing to me.
It's both.
You know, so it's both.
I mean, that's of course, everyone... there's always going to be a debate about nature versus nurture for intelligence. Of course, but it's both.
But, and just that ability though, but like that with the vertices area of the brain, it seems like a genetic thing, like almost purely, right? Like it doesn't like. So are you saying if like someone with that part of I keep calling the vertices, Wernicke's, my bad, but so if someone has that, right, and then they were adopted into a family that's not musical at all, right? Do you think they would still have perfect pitch?
Yeah, they would have to be conditioned to get it because sometimes it is just genetic.
Yeah.
But it could be taught to most children when they're still in the critical learning stage. If they're exposed to, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
Because most humans could develop it if they really wanted to. There is a course that does teach it. It just takes a lot of patience. I've been doing it for over a year.
Yeah, you're a musician.
And it did increase my abilities for sure. Like it's incredible how just ear training actually increases your abilities in music.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a sales background, is that correct?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Programming.
But again, that's just how my where I'm going with it is because I kind of want to like learn this to like learn if people are being truthful or like learn their emotional states more. But
there's ways to learn that.
Like so. With this, like, because you're a musical person, you're a musician, do you think that there's a connection between that and you wanting to find these patterns? Like, you maybe being able to identify this perfect pitch in music? Like, there's kind of like a perfect pitch in reality and language that exists everywhere. Is there a connection there, or am I off base?
Yeah, looking for colors in things that don't have colors to them is exactly what people like me do. They like gravity. There's a theory on even gravity waves. It's called rainbow gravity theory that posits that even gravity waves have colors to them. That the individual wavelengths have different meanings to them. That's just a way of being like, hey, maybe that's just very interesting to me. Is like maybe there is colors that we just don't know about. So yeah, that's very important for what I'm talking about is colors in general and qualia. What is qualia? It's really just subjective experiences that we can't quantify. It's color. It's texture.
Yeah. And I saw this, like, I think it was a TED Talk, and it was talking about some concept, and I don't know if this is true or if I'm even going to say it right, so forgive me, but they did like a study of like the most commonly used words in every language, or maybe it was just the English language, but it turns out it was like exact and then like the proportions were also exact. Like so, there was like the most commonly used word, and then the next most commonly used word was used exactly half as much, and then the next one down was used even half as that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but there's just this really weird pattern for like the top. Like, I think 17 or 18 words. I don't know how many words it was, but it was just a really weird intrinsic pattern of how commonly used these words were. And then it was like almost perfectly ratioed out to where, like each one was used at least half as much as the other, like almost exactly. Yeah. And do you know what I'm talking about?
No, not specifically. No.
I want to remember where I heard that. And I want to send that to you because it sounds very like similar to what you're kind of like going. You know what I'm saying? Like just this structure to like language and everything.
There's a structure. There's a pattern. There's math to it. There's statistics.
And then I don't know how far we want to go down this rabbit hole, but everything you're talking about.
No limit to how deep.
Yeah. Everything you're talking about though just makes me think about free will, right?
Yep.
You know, so like.
Do you believe in it?
I think because we're aware of that concept, like, I don't know. I guess, yes, I do, but I also think there's cause and effect. You know what I'm saying? So if there's cause and effect, right, and we're just like reacting to something that we went through previously, then I guess not, right? Because I'm reacting to something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm subject to that.
You've already laid out all the buttons that about free will,
yeah. So
causality versus I forgot how you put it.
But I mean, like on a smaller level, we would still have free will, free cause and effect. Yeah. So on a smaller level,
what was the other thing you said before that? You said we have this, but we don't have. You said we have the concept of it. Just knowing about the concept of it is pretty interesting. That kind of puts a knot in the thought process of the fact that you could even contemplate it. Yeah. Kind of
means it exists, right?
Does it? I don't know if it really proves or disproves that it exists. It just throws another complexity. Yeah. Self-referencing.
I mean, but because like the fact that we're aware that we maybe don't have free will means that we have like the ability to like fight against it or make our own choices. I don't know. Like I could have chosen not to come here, right? Like, so it's like, does that mean I have free will? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, or I could have chosen to go to a movie, you know, like what? So if I have like those choices, doesn't that mean I have free will? Like, I know that's like the dumb man's way of looking at it, but that kind of leads me to think yes. And I also think that, like, I kind of talked about this a second ago, but I'm a believer in God, like, you know, and I don't have all the answers, you know, don't get me wrong, don't like challenge me on this, but just as someone who believes in God, I believe God gave us free will and that there's judgment, you know, so I feel like if you believe in God, you kind of have to believe in free will.
I guess I kind of do believe that there is some free will. Like, otherwise, what the hell's the point?
Yeah.
If we're all just watching something else play out without any input, we're just watching ourselves react to that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I feel like there is cause and effect that is influencing us.
Yeah.
Giving us strong pushes and pulls on which decisions to make. Yeah. But we could still make decisions, though. We still have some willpower to override those.
Yeah, and it's also like the idea of cause and effect with me. Help me be more forgiving with people, you know, like just in terms of like let's take Hitler for instance, right? You know, like obviously an evil man, you know, he did bad things, but you know, his dad beat the shit out of him, you know, he got his testicles blown off in fucking World War I, you know, like he went through a
funny way to put it.
Yeah, he went through a crazy depression. It's like he went through all these things, right? And if you kind of like look at the hardships he went through, it's like, is he really evil or was he just reacting to what he went through? You know what I'm saying?
Right, and so that's the cause and effect thing. That's the cause. That's like you get all these signals. It's like, look what this. It's like it makes some sense, but even then, you could say, yeah, but doesn't he have self? Can't he look outside himself? Isn't that what a truly intelligent person would do? Is look outside their own context?
Yes, and I mean, I kind of want to just like localize it to me. I don't know if that's the right word, but just with me, like, you know, I had people treat me very poorly when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? Like
I could tell.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like no, but I got like bullied a lot and shit, and like
you have like not a chip on your shoulder, but like you have like this toughness.
Oh,
it's like I could tell that. you've been fucked with. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and but like with a lot of those people, I found out like later, like they're actually sociopaths. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something wrong with their brain, like literally. And it's like, well, they're not evil. Like I'm not saying that I forgive them for what they did or whatever, but it's like they're just somebody who was going through their own thing and they have a problem, and it was just a reaction to that. It's like, you know, kind of just understanding that they don't have all the power over their actions, you know, with what they did to me. There was a cause and then there was an effect, you know. In that case, it was their brain being fucked up. It's like, oh, okay, like I forgive that. You know, like if that, I just said like two different things. I do forgive them. I don't give a shit.
That's what Sam Harris talks about. He has a long lecture on free will, and he says, the good thing about not believing in it is you don't hate people anymore, because if you were them, you would have acted exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I know. I need to listen to that.
If all the variables were the same, if we could turn back time, and all the variables were exactly the same, what would change? Nothing. You would act the same way, according to him.
Yeah.
That's what he believes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could turn back time, what is different? Nothing changed. You would probably act exactly the same way.
Yeah,
we don't know that. We don't know if that's true.
I know, but I mean, they're like when people say, "Oh, you have no free will," that sounds like a bad concept. But you know, there's actually something like really like affirming and good about it. You know what I'm saying?
That's
like
the positive takeaway.
Yeah, I think there's a positive takeaway with everything. Another thing, and again, we're kind of going off in the weeds a little bit. I want to get back to your theory because I just think it's so fascinating. But with like nihilism, you know, like there being no objective purpose, you know, like this was T.J. Miller, actually. He was talking just about philosophy and stuff, and he's like, the positive form of nihilism is that if everything means nothing, right, then everything can mean anything. You know, if there's no objective purpose or plan, that means we have complete kind of control over our existence, you know?
Right.
And I don't know, that sounds like really positive to me. Like, do you think like nihilism can be positive, or is it all a negative completely?
So if you take that interpretation, if you believe that, there's a positiveness to that. I think it's maybe a little bit incomplete, maybe, just because we don't live in a vacuum. Like our meaning might fuck up somebody else's meaning. So it's not like we can just be purely nihilistic and be like, no, that doesn't mean it's my like. You have to. I might be misinterpreting it because I don't think they believe in like chaos, right? They do. They're just saying there's no fucking judge. There's nobody judging you effectively. There's no guy in the sky affected. So you might as well not feel so down on. I don't know. And it's all up to you how you make it. It's all what you make of it.
Yeah, and I always felt like when I was growing up in the church, and I think this is pretty much every religion, is like they say that this God has a plan for your life. But I think it's the idea that we are God's plan. It's like God put us here, right? He gave us certain like faults and certain strengths. And the true test of life is like, what are we going to do with that? And how did we handle those things? You know, so I think that there's like, in a weird way, like the whole nihilistic idea of like, there's no objective purpose in a way that's sort of true. Like, I'm not saying that there's an objective thing we're supposed to do, but like, it's all about like how we deal with those circumstances. So I don't think people really make mistakes. You know, I don't think that people really veer from their path, right? Because I think that's all a part of the path. You know, it's all a part of your journey. Mm-hmm. And that's a part of learning. You know, so, you know, just for people out there that feel like they've really messed up their lives or something, it's like maybe you need to change things. But I think that what you're going through right now, or these mistakes that you made, that they're going to be a good thing. Like there's like meaning to that. Like that's the point. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, like let's say, you know, one of my favorite examples of this is Lenny Cook. Did you ever watch that documentary? You're a documentary guy. And it's the Safdie brothers, right? Who they did like Uncut Gems, you know, that was like one of their big movies. But they did this documentary. It was one of their first ones where the year LeBron was being drafted, right? There was this other prospect named Lenny Cook. And he was just like a basketball phenom. It was like him and LeBron. Like they were like the two guys. And he ended up not even playing in the NBA. Like he took a shitty deal with like some like low-rate sports company, and they basically more or less like ripped him off. And then enough time had passed by where the NBA wasn't interested anymore, and it caught up with him at 30, right? And like the whole kind of like gist of the documentary is like, oh man, that guy really messed up his life. Like he's not like this basketball phenom. But just taking that example, it's like maybe that's not a bad thing. Like if he learns from that experience, if he became a better person because of it, it's like I feel like people kind of view their lives based on what other people's expectations were, and it's like that's maybe not the way to look at it. It's like even if you're kind of a ne'er-do-well or you feel like you've messed up, it's like maybe you're a better person or you will become a better person because of these mistakes. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Yeah, people get caught up in this thing that they think they're meant to be. It happens to everybody, most people. Or they just don't have any... not everybody really has huge ambitions, but the ones who do usually they always had like a purpose. They always like felt like, I'm meant to. I can speak for myself. I was always this type of person. It was like, I'm meant to be something. I don't know what, but something interesting.
Yeah, and
some kind of artist.
Do you feel like you've like accomplished that?
Not yet. No, like I'm on the path. Like I'm not. I haven't done nil. I have accomplished some things I'm proud of creatively. But it's not I haven't like reached my purpose yet.
What's the biggest accomplishment you've ever had creatively?
The single most thing would be an app. The app I made that paid for this house.
Oh wow,
that would be creative. It counts as creative.
It is
because I designed it myself.
That's awesome. Like, and I'm sorry, I'm just like, I kind of wanted to know like what your answer was to that. Just
which one?
Well, just to like what your biggest creative accomplishment was. Because like, I would have thought you said like some piece of music or like some comedy you did. But
I thought that comes up, but those are just small projects. This was a big multi-year project.
Awesome. And like, I love talking to you, man. This is great, man. Like you're such a fascinating dude, man. Like, keep doing this podcast because I love it. But again, I'm sorry. I feel like I keep veering from the topic of Terence McKenna.
No, you're doing great, brother.
So like again, like I kind of want to go back on something I said with Terence McKenna and how he's seeing these patterns, and I guess how you're seeing these patterns too. So like, how would this? If I learned what you wanted to teach about language, how is it going to make my life better? How is it going to make the average person's life better? How are we going to become more enlightened by what you have to teach us?
Yeah. So it's so hard to even explain it to most people that I don't expect anybody to just really run away with it the way I did when I first came up with it. Because, it's philosophy. So, but it's also, if it's true that these labels can and should be applied elsewhere, like that language actually is the correct label, the technical term that should be expanded or applied to physics, then it's only, and absolutely, I think there will be revolutionary experiments and frameworks created and mathematical equations that come out based on this discovery that everything actually is just based on one person's interpretation. Everything is based on semantics. In the whole universe, we're all just trying to just express ourselves and hope that we're heard. And it gets mistranslated more often than not. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect translation. That's another thing that I kind of believe, is that's kind of what makes us alive. If we could just perfectly telepathically communicate, that would also make us purposeless. The whole point of why we're here is because we don't all see things the same way.
Yeah, it's what makes us individual. It's what makes us unique. And, that's what I don't like about psychedelics, because a lot of people, and I'm not bashing it too much, like whatever your flavor of having fun is, like I'm not your dad.
I don't do them for fun anymore. They're not fun for me, but yeah.
But my problem is like when people say it, like it dissolves the ego, right? Like that's a good thing.
It does.
But and it might be in some ways, but I feel like that's mostly not a good thing. I feel like what separates us from the animals is the ego. But like the fact that I exist apart from you, right? Like we're not connected. We're individual. And that's kind of like what I think you were saying a second ago. It's like, We're all kind of approaching it from like our own separate vantage point. So I'm sorry, in terms of your idea, I keep veering off of it.
No, this is
Like, so with I'm talking about like the average boob, so me, right? Like you're saying that everything is perception. Then my take on that was, if I go to the coffee shop and I feel like the guy's rude to me or whatever, and I'm impacted by it, I'm really just interpreting that event based on previous events that I've had, right? Like, and I'm kind of correlating it with that, but there's a whole separate thing going on with that guy. And there's just probably a different interpretation on his end, right? Like there's not an objective thing that happened. It's all our previous experiences with language. We're kind of like coming at it from different vantage points and interpreting it differently. So I shouldn't take it personally. Am I getting it?
No, that's a one thing. That's a very specific thing that psychology is something I could talk about. How you interpret social interactions. Of course, that's a linguistic thing.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can't blame yourself necessarily all the time, because you do have, your brain will just map these inputs to what it knows it just has a framework, and it's like, okay, it's logical. Everyone's brain is actually logical, even crazy people, I think. To that, there is some logic. You just have to follow the logic, and you'll understand why that person got upset. It does make sense to them. There's very few cases where somebody gets upset and they can't explain. Like, there's no logic to it. No, there's usually some logic to it. Like empathy is what you use to discover that. Logic.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I was trying to interconnect it back with your idea.
I don't know if that really.
No, that was a good response to what I said, but I feel like what I said just was too off base from what your idea is.
No, not really.
Yeah, because I guess I just want to find out how like the average person can apply it to their lives versus
that. Right,
like
that was a good example.
Okay,
what I just said is true. This is what empathy is. It's the ability to look at somebody else's point of view and feel the same pain as them.
Yeah.
That takes intelligence. That's probably the highest form of intelligence. So there's logic, though, to even empathy. If you could apply logic to just everyday occurrences, like, okay, I get it. If I was him, that's his processing, that's his framework in his world, so there is some pragmatic, even just, I think it just makes you smarter, because if it's true, then I think it does make you more equipped to understand all phenomenon.
So who is this idea for mainly? Like, because I feel like it's a great idea. Like, but I also feel
so many fields.
But I also feel like I don't necessarily have the toolkit to really like. I can mostly. You're doing a good job explaining it. Like, you're doing a really good job explaining it right now. But I also feel like if we were to really dive into it, I'd get maybe 30 to 40% of it if I'm lucky and I really try hard, right? So is this for people who are just disciplined in scientific study? Is it for that community specifically, or is it more of a philosophy for the masses?
It's certainly not only for scientists, because it applies to art. Artists are just writing something down. The word write, what does that? It means outputting something. Speaking, you're outputting something. That's a form of writing. Same thing. It's language. Anything you do involves language. There's nothing that doesn't involve language. So it's art. It's just as much relevant to art as it is science.
And I also want to bring this up to you because it's been a long time since I looked into this, and I'm going to explain it wrong, but this guy's story is fascinating, where I forgot the guy's name. I'll send you his book. It was called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes. But he was a missionary who went to this foreign country to like speak to this basically uncontacted tribe, right? And their language is really hard to understand because like they don't have any past tense or future tense. It's all present tense, So the way that they talk is like super, super complicated. Like it takes a long time to like relay a concept. But anyway, he ended up not believing in God. I don't like that part of the story, but basically because he couldn't explain like the idea of an eternal being. Like the idea of eternity just didn't even compute to them because, again, they're just all like in the present. Like they have like no way to describe history or
Isn't that
future.
crazy?
Yeah, no, which is like nuts. And like I think you should look into that. All right, and I'll send you that book and that guy because he's just like he's kind of like an out there theorist, but it's really interesting to me. But like anyway, but yeah, like it's kind of like relaying language, like what you're saying.
So
You know,
isn't that interesting though? That, or at least isn't that kind of a point of like, yeah, if you have no concept in your language, you're not going to have it in any part of your society.
Yeah.
It's got to be encoded in the language for it to exist as a concept. We don't have any understanding of any concept without language.
And what I thought was really cool about the story is, you know, people like looked at those people as primitive, like our society would. It's like all those tribes people or whatever, but they're actually very, very forgiving. You know, like, because they just really didn't hold a grudge. I think, and he theorized it was because
Well, if you
of,
don't
like,
believe in past tense, how
Yeah.
the hell could you? That's hilarious.
Exactly. It was just all about the now. You know, like right, and that's what like a lot of like Ram Dass, like Buddha, that's what they all say. It's like be here now,
Right.
You know, and it's like it's those people that could do it. You know, our society with all of its advancements and technology, we can't do it. You know, and that yeah. But anyway, I just thought like, you know, in terms of like what you're saying with language and how we relate things, it seems very connected to what you're trying to do. You know,
Yeah, it touches on everything. So it's a kind of a theory of everything, you know. So that's why it's like taken over my life. Like I spend all day on it, all day, every day.
well, what are you looking at right now? Like,
Right now, I'm actually just still actually working out the actual theory itself, the nuts and bolts of it, the actual term and terminology and the formal definitions. I'm doing it so many refinements over and over again until they're perfect. So that's what I'm doing right now is actually just finishing the theory, like putting it into words, codifying it. So that's taken a long time. But also on the side, I get distracted by just fun side projects of possible research papers. I am working on a research paper with a academic. I hired an academic to help me with with a paper, but he's the one mostly working on that right now. So I'm working on the theory. He's working on the paper.
okay, and do you have a name for it yet? Do you mind if I ask?
Yeah, I call it. Have I said that? Yeah, I guess I've called it. I've said that it's just called node theory right now. It's just a working title.
That's no that.
I don't care what to call it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, linguiverse. So I also call it the linguiverse model. Yeah, we live in a linguiverse.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good name for it, dude.
So that's the
Like,
fun way of calling it. But node is just a technical thing because there's node networks, whatever. It's just more into the details of the theory itself. Yeah, there's details.
And then I guess I asked you this last night, right? But I want to ask you this here because I don't know how deeply we delved into it. But I kind of brought up like the chicken and the egg, right? So you're saying that the universe is language, right? But I feel like maybe we evolved and we begin to perceive things and then we have language. So it's just how we describe what's already there.
So this
But
is
you know what I'm saying?
fascinating stuff. So if you look up the origin of language, you'll see that it's one of the most long debated thing. They don't know when language started. They don't know how it emerged. It's one of the most long debated things. They were probably debating it even before languages even existed, because language always existed is the point I'm kind of making. Even before they had spoken languages, we just had other forms. We had body language. We could grunt.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't as sophisticated. But of course, we still had ways of communicating.
So you said that they don't know how it emerged, but or do you mean they don't know where it emerged? Because I think that how they would say it emerged is just through the process of evolution and just like what, we're grunts and then.
But how did we
syllables.
not have it before? How the hell did we just not have language? So you're talking about,
We
you're talking
did.
about spoken language.
Yeah, spoken language, yeah.
So yeah, that had to emerge.
Okay.
After at a certain point, we did start using actual structured words instead of just okay. But even before that, we still were using words because the brain perceives anything meaningful as a word. So a grunt at a specific pitch or an ascending melodic pitch, these musical ways of structuring sounds, that's a language. So we don't know when that emerged, actually. We don't know when that emerged. Animals were doing that before humans. So we always had language I'm not, it's debate. This is up for debate, but my assertion that I strongly am asserting is that we always had some form of language.
Do you speak more than one language?
I'm not bilingual at all.
Huh.
Never learned a second language.
Yeah, like a lot of people say, like, I was just watching a video on this, like how like learning another language changes your personality based on like how the words are said, and like the cadence. Yeah.
So I've experienced what it feels like to kind of it makes you so much smarter to know.
But no, do you feel that would benefit your research going to another country where they speak another language and like knowing what that's like? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that you're not just talking about spoken language, but I mean this is a big part of it, right? Like spoken language. So that would seem to me like a good idea. If you want to like develop this idea more about how language affects us and how we like describe things and how that forms our reality.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I just don't have a reason to quite yet. Yeah, if somebody invites me, if I have a reason to. Yeah, I would work with people anywhere around the world. I don't care.
So, I want to ask, like, what, I guess I've already asked, like, how you want to change things with the language, or with this theory, right? Like, how do you view the world? This is probably a pretty similar question, being different. Like, let's say everybody accepts this is true. Mm-hmm. And then this becomes like, I guess we're already over an hour and 18 minutes in. I don't know if you have like a time limit on this thing or whatever.
Going for a little,
yeah. I mean, I always feel like podcasts though should like.
This is not long. This is not long for a podcast.
Yeah, it's not too long. Yeah.
There's so many. But way longer, less interesting podcasts.
I know, and it's like they try to do Rogan length podcasts.
We're doing fine.
And it's like, yeah. I'm not.
We could, but
And I just wanted to say, like, how do you view this changing the world? I guess I've already asked that. Basically.
Well, there's so many myriad of ways that I could pick. I could pick one. Okay, the biggest. So medicine. So if we know that everything is just a language trying to just talk to other cells, organs, if that's accepted, okay, it'll just be like, it'll probably change the way that we kind of diagnose diseases, because we'll just be like, okay, there's this type of lexical stress in the bones. That'll totally be different. We'll have a totally different way of talking about things. Like, okay, there's the bone, this specific bone has its own native language. The tibia, for example, has its own native language. You got to learn it. Got to learn how it interacts with its environment to really master, to fully empathize with the skeletal system. You have to speak its language. So this is still very surface level. So ALS is a disease that I am very interested in figuring out. It's a very complicated disease. We don't have a cure for it, but once it starts, it's too late. Once we can detect it, it's too late to do anything about it. So it's so scary and creepy, and I don't know. That's one I'm very passionate about. And yeah, it's a feedback loop. Something is not being. There's a type of stress forming in the neurons. The neurons, motor neurons, are the ones that we're talking about. They're very important cells, and they have to stay healthy your whole life. They don't duplicate. They don't get replaced. So the theory is that they get too much of a certain type of stress that just doesn't go away, and that leads to this negative feedback loop of proteins being misfolded. And this is the actual science that I'm talking about. But if we understand that there's a meaningful transfer of words, between neurons, I think that'll help.
So my understanding was it's kind of like the opposite of cancer in a way. Like instead of like a cell overproducing and creating like a tumor, right? It's cells underproducing and proteins underproducing to where they don't function anymore.
Yeah, it's just the neuron gets stressed to the point where it starts misfolding the proteins.
Well, Stephen Hawking had ALS, right? That was his. So why did he live so long?
Yes, he just was very lucky.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, it's not unusual at all to live that long with ALS.
It's no, he's by far like the oldest person to live. In my
I
understanding,
don't know, but it's just not common. Not common.
Yeah.
Usually it's like only a couple of years.
Yeah.
that we live. Yeah, it's a terrible prognosis.
I heard a conspiracy theory once. It's kind of interesting where that Stephen Hawking died actually a long time ago, and they just kept replacing him, and then like saying whatever they thought was science and using him as a vehicle.
Right.
Like through I don't know, but that honestly, like just because he lived so exceptionally long with that. That makes me think
Crazy.
that, yeah.
But even so, he only had access to one muscle.
Yeah.
Only one muscle in his cheek.
Oh,
So
man.
it wasn't fun to be him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it is.
So
It's, yeah.
We need to be able. So this is complicated. So where I'm getting at is, on the surface, it's just you're applying a metaphorical framework to something extremely complicated. But the fact that if it's true, that means we could keep zooming in and being like, okay, what's causing this feedback loop? What's the thing that's not? So we got to detect, we got to empathize with the neurons and figure out a way to detect that they're stressed.
Okay, first of all, I just want to apologize to you in the audience. I just slipped in some of my crazy conspiracy theories. I apologize. I almost went down the Stephen Hawking rabbit hole. My bad. But anyway, I'm glad you brought up patterns again because Terence McKenna in the video talked about how there was a correlation between, I believe it was the I Ching, and DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
64 codons,
So,
yes.
yeah, like... Do you know more about that? Because I was hoping you did. If you've like seen the video. And
Not yet, because I only just heard about it like a month ago.
Oh.
But yeah, that's interesting as fuck. That they happen to get that same number, 64, that is the exact number of codons in DNA, possible sentences basically in DNA that could like combinations of words that could possibly happen.
And they usually use the term language for DNA.
And DNA is the example of a language that's it's a universal language between all biological entities.
When it comes to like different organisms in your body, I know it's all your DNA, but is there a separation of DNA between the organisms in your body and you, or is it all your DNA?
It's all the same DNA, but you have mitochondrial DNA too. That's also its own thing.
Okay, so that's because whenever I looked into RNA vaccines, that's basically what they're doing is that they're editing the mitochondrial DNA of whatever that disease is to where it doesn't reproduce, right?
Yeah, I don't
know.
speak to that. I know it has something to do with that.
Yeah. Okay, so but again, that just kind of correlates with what you're saying about it being a language, right? Like if DNA.
See, that's the most concrete example in nature of clearly it's a language. How the hell did that emerge? Yeah. But everybody would agree that it's at least, you could call that a language, dude.
Yeah.
It encodes instructions on how to build not only a human, it encodes instructions on how to make more DNA. It's a self-referential language. It explains how to make more DNA in DNA. It's like how English can explain English. You could teach somebody English by speaking English. That's the same thing. It's a self-referential language.
And I guess and I'm gonna keep trying. Yeah.
Sorry.
I forget what it is. Like the AG whatever T
AGI?
whatever. AG, what are the letters? There's 4 different letters to make up DNA, right?
Oh, Gattaca?
Yeah,
that's how I remember it.
yeah.
For the movie,
Yeah.
so Gattaca's how, GA, whatever.
But yeah, I know, and that's everything. That kind of makes me go into simulation theory a little bit. Like, what if that's the computer code for our
That's everything
existing...
biological, but it doesn't explain things below it. It doesn't explain stars or atoms. It just everything biological on this planet uses the same universal language.
But the stars and stuff and everything else, they're made out of things that are also on this planet, right?
Well, we emerged from stars, so for a planet to happen, you need a star.
Yeah.
So we're made out of star stuff.
So, ultimately, then we're all related. Wouldn't it have the same DNA that we have?
Well, not technically. I mean, literally DNA.
Okay.
Literally, obviously not. They have their own language. Stars have their own language. it's different. It's just way different than us. We can't speak.
So, I asked you this last night. I want to ask you this for like the podcast audience. If people want to learn more about like language and interconnectedness, what are some videos that we could watch? Like, Terence McKenna, Final Interview. Check that out. I talked about a bunch.
One.
That's a good one. I saw another TED Talk. I think I brought it up at the beginning of the podcast, but it was a lady that had a stroke and it completely changed her perception of reality.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, it's a very famous one.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I think that's like a lot about language too. Is what you talked about.
Did. It was about that. Yeah. About how she compensated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what else, man? What else can we look into?
As far as content that I was influenced by, let me think for a sec. Nothing's really popping up. Because it's really just reading mostly. It's a lot of reading.
What have you been reading?
About like Whitehead. So process philosophy is big. And then, we already mentioned him. He was influenced by this, though. He was influenced by process theory.
What, Whitehead?
Process philosophy. Yes, Whitehead is the guy. Bertrand Russell he worked with him to create. He's more famous. But anyway.
Yeah, Russell's Teapot. That's the only thing about Bertrand Russell.
Well, he was the student of this Whitehead guy. So Whitehead was like teaching him. Yet, whatever. They worked together too. They They made Principia Mathematica, which is this hugely important mathematical proof. Anyway, he was a mathematician as well as a philosopher.
Principia Mathematica, was that also the names of Newton's book? Like originally, that was his big book, right? When he did his theory of gravity.
There might be something similar to that, but PM
Principia
that is Bertrand Russell and Whitehead. It came out in the 1800s.
Huh.
Early 1800s. Mid 1800s.
So Whitehead.
It came out a long time ago.
Whitehead. And he was a scientist?
Yeah,
sorry, I'm going to do this after the podcast. I'm so sorry, man.
So that's one, and then even way before him, Barter Hari, I can't say because it's Sanskrit. I can't pronounce it properly, but Barter Hari is this grammarian from the 5th century India, and so he had the same theory as me. He's the only person on the planet that's ever existed since I started researching this that also said the same thing, which is that language encompasses reality and cognition and language are one and the same. He said the exact same thing. So Barter Hari. Okay, I'm going to look that guy up too, man. I'm going to Google all these people when I leave just so I remember to maintain it. And was his theory pretty much in sync with what you were saying? And it was one of those things it's oh man, this is what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm writing. That's what the scholar I'm working with, he is like a Asian studies PhD, so he could translate Sanskrit from in his head. He could just do that. So we are translating it, and I'm currently, that's what I'm working on.
So Barter Hari, okay. I just want people to learn more about what you're talking about and maybe gain more familiarity with it.
They will, because hopefully they will when I start publishing stuff.
And who in modern times, academics that might have a presence online or people that we can look up, is there anybody in modern times that has a similar philosophy to what you're saying?
That's still alive?
Yeah.
I'd have to think, but no one comes to mind who's still alive.
Really?
Everyone's kind of just recently dead. A couple of years ago, someone died who was into physics, which is semiotics applied to physics. They're not alive anymore, but that would be somebody that also was studying exactly what I'm studying. But no one is alive who's doing what I'm doing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's nobody that I could be yes, this guy is who influenced me. No, they're all dead.
I feel like I've heard similar things to what you're talking about from
Terence
other
McKenna also is one of them. He's one of the people that's recently dead that, 25 years ago, however long ago, 30 years ago, but still that's pretty recent, who also said that language encompasses reality.
And is any of your research or any of your theory about how language influences behavior?
It's absolutely about that, because behavior is also a act of language.
So, do you think that we can control people with the words we use?
Words, that's why words are so powerful, man. It's because people, that's all we have is words.
And is your theory going to kind of help us decipher that more, like what words to use to become more powerful?
Yeah, that would be the soft science side of things. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, there's such a thing as social, is such a thing as like power in language. Words do have power, like a lot of power to them.
And I guess that I'm glad you said that, because that's sort of what I'm interested in, is like the soft science side of it. Like, how is this going to affect society? How does this affect,
I think our minds are linguistically based. Our subconsciouses, that's a different language. We can't perfectly speak it, yet it gets translated up to our native language, which is just our awareness. Our consciousness would be our native language. Yet there's subconsciousnesses and the unconscious that also has its own language that we communicate with. We can't perfectly communicate. Like I was saying, nothing is perfectly translatable. So even that has to be translated. So that's mind-blowing in itself when it comes to psychology. Just your own brain is plain. You have to kind of talk to yourself. Even that is a conversation. There's no such thing as just you talking to yourself. No, you're talking to somebody else. Anyway, and then interpersonal stuff I could talk about too.
So interpersonal stuff, I was actually about to ask that. And I don't know if this really falls in line with your theory, but like the process of saying things out loud. I feel like a lot of people get stuck in life because they repeat bad stuff constantly,
Yeah.
and like, I guess you're talking about how language links everything. And again, this is sort of a different topic, but like one of my favorite videos of all time is Will Smith. There's like a compilation of him, like it's him 10 minutes of being like motivational, but he just talks about like, there's a certain power that having a thought makes, and like the words that you say in your head are out loud to yourself. They kind of define your reality.
Yeah.
And like a big portion of like changing your reality or getting what you want out of life is changing what you say to yourself. So how do you feel about that? Right? Because I guess if we're saying that like language is sort of universal and more important than we are even like previously thought to believe it, because that is sort of what you're saying, right? It's like the key to everything. Does that mean that it kind of has more power to change your reality than we think it does? Like,
yeah. Because it's what writes reality into existence. Language is reality, so of course I think that things going on in your head, anything that's floating around your head, that's a program, like running. It's a loop. It's like everything that exists. The only reason it exists because it's a feedback loop. Like humans, there's something that's looping around and around to get to feel as if it's stable, as if it just exists in one place, when it's actually a loop of many events. Anyway, that forms this continuum. Anyway, the point. Okay, so why did I say? Okay, I'm kind of losing where this started. What was the question?
Well, no, I guess like it was about like just the power of repetition.
Okay, yes, got it. So, therefore, since everything is a feedback loop, you're going to be exposed to the same inputs, and that means the same language, same meanings, the same words coming in. Yeah, you're going to go by whatever is in front of you. So, yeah, I mean, if you keep repeating the same negative things, of course, and everything is a feedback loop. So that's why some people like. When somebody's like on the path of self-destruction, it's like you could predict, yeah, they're probably going to die soon. It's because they're on a negative feedback loop. Somebody's on a positive feedback loop, same thing. Oh, this guy's on a hot path towards success. It's always a momentum thing. Everything's about momentum and spin. It's almost like things are spinning towards one direction. You gotta push against it to get it to go not in that direction. Like physics, it's like the analogy I use for decline, for cognitive decline, is the ISS, the space station. It has to stay in a perfect zone in the upper atmosphere, or else it won't. It has to stay in just this perfect zone, and they have to adjust it. They have to, give it like boosting to keep it there. Otherwise it will decline, and it will eventually crash into the fucking earth.
Yeah.
So that's how everything is. Everybody's mental state is the same way. You have to give it just the right amount of feedback.
And you're like really such a motivated guy. I'm really impressed. Just and I don't know everything about you. A very limited perception, so I don't want to like speak for you, but I feel like a lot of people have this like idea of you. Just like whenever I've heard you brought up, you're a very motivated guy. You're a very successful guy. So like, what are some things that you do every day to like motivate yourself to like study these things like linguistics or get up and do this podcast? Like because I feel like that just takes a lot of drive. And I mean,
I've always had the drive. Yeah, anything I'm doing, it's full throttle. Like when I was doing comedy, you didn't see me. To be honest, I was not really I was not very good. I was not dedicated when I moved to Austin, but I was still a comic. And before that, I was pretty hardcore. So anyway, but I drifted from that hobby to the next hobby, and so now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this, whatever you call it. And it's just how I am. I've just always been like, no, you're meant to be doing something at a high level. I guess I did get like positive encouragement as a kid. I guess not from my parents, from just teachers. I remember a science teacher when I was like 5, just instilled like this thing in me. I was like, oh, maybe I could be a scientist. I don't know. Like he just instilled this thing in me that I felt I was special. So if you think you're special as a young kid, that will either stay with you or be proven wrong, It could be a good thing, but either way, it happened. That's what happened with me. I just always thought I was special and meant to be an achiever, like a high achiever.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on something that I feel like it kind of goes to the ADHD personality, because a lot of like success motivational people I listen to, they all say you have to focus on one thing, right? And that's always been a problem for me, because I feel like my problem is I've never wanted to just be a comedian. Like when you talk about comedy in Austin, I don't want to be just that. I don't even want to be the most famous at just that. I want to be a writer. I want to be someone that, does like a nonfiction podcast. I want to do all these different things. I want to play chess. And it's like, I feel like that's a detriment. And at least in a few different ways, I feel like you've mastered that. I know it's an ongoing process, so to say you've mastered it might not be fair.
Yeah, no,
right?
I still feel like that's the curse of that is the curse of ADHD, is you can never stick with one thing.
Yeah, I gain interest and I lose them, and I like gain like a surface level understanding of a lot of things, but I understand very few things in depth.
Yes, same here. I'm not an expert really yet on anything. Okay, maybe on some things. But the only reason I became good at it is because it gave me dopamine.
So with this, though, this theory, it's like I would say you're at least somewhat an expert on it because you're publishing a paper.
I'd say I'm pretty good at for how little I've been considering myself in this I'm a pseudo academic, and I'm pretty good. I think I'm pretty. I don't fuck.
Yeah, no, we've been doing this.
It's hard
for
to not sound like a.
It's almost too. Yeah, well, no. It's
okay,
I don't think it's douchey at all.
We'll end just after we get this.
I'm kind of
this last. Yeah,
I'm kind of blowing smoke off your.
I'm still very engaged in this conversation because it's most about me. That helped.
Yeah. If you want to know, we can keep going and stuff. I just like at the 2 hour mark.
You probably are an expert too on things.
I mean, I don't think so. I really don't. I question that. Like the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like the people that suck at something the most are the ones that are the most confident. And I never want to appear that confident. Like what you just said about like being a pseudo academic. It's like that makes me think that you actually do know a lot.
That's Dunning-Kruger. What I was just doing. I think I'm pretty good for help. Yeah, that's Dunning-Kruger.
But it was the opposite of that because you acknowledge right away.
Yeah, that's why I didn't even want to say it.
You know what I'm saying? The fact you don't want to say it means it's not that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more you learn, the more you realize how little.
And I feel like just my perception of myself as being stupid is a good thing because that makes me smarter. That makes me want to listen to what people say and not just reject it whole cloth. Yeah. For instance, like Terence McKenna. I went through a period when I was younger where I did psychedelic drugs, and then I've kind of grown out of that, and I sort of don't like those things anymore. And that's just my personal journey. I don't like drugs. I don't like what psychedelics did to me. One time I did a bunch of acid and I wouldn't stop shaking for a few days afterwards. It was like when you hit a fork against a table, and I felt like I damaged my brain, and I just kind of have a rejection towards people who like are proponents of it, you know, like no, and like, but when you talked about Terence McKenna and when I watched that video, it's like he's actually talking about a really lot of interesting things. I shouldn't just let that negative perception completely influence my opinion of what he has to say. You know, it's like, oh man, I was ignorant of what he was about. You know, I actually have things to learn from him, you know, and that's again, just in terms of life, I don't want to have that judgment of like, oh, this guy's a fucking idiot and I'm smart. It's like, no, maybe I'm the dumbest person in the room. Maybe you have something to teach me.
It is probably the better way to go about life.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You just don't want to not use it to you don't want to not do anything though.
and I mean, like, I that's what I aspire to, but I can be like a dick if someone's like, if I'm arguing with someone, like I can be arrogant and like kind of, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I just feel like that perception of being a fool and being dumb, it's like that can be good, you know?
Well, you gotta err on the side of there's always more to learn, and curiosity is a huge thing that is not really encouraged.
And it's also with like comedy or like, and this is just any kind of art too, right? Where if you're at an open mic level and you have like an ego and you're talking shit on everybody else, right? It's like fuck that guy. Like that's always the least talented person in the room, right? The one that doesn't want to be there.
It's funny.
And like the one that's just like shitting on everyone. It's always like the 40-year-old fucking guy who knows he waited too long to do this, who knows that he can't do this. And he's like insecure about it. So he's projecting that.
Yeah. If they're 40, that's way too late to be starting comedy. Yeah. I've seen it with like younger people, of course, who are like that. And like, you know, maybe like 30-ish, you know, like in Austin, I've seen that. I was hosting that mic at that gym mic. I was hosting once, and I was doing comedy for long with this guy, and he was acting like he was too good to be there. And it's like, dude, you're not. Like, I didn't say anything. I was just like, wow, this is not how. Like, he walked out right after his set, like thinking it was just like a waste of his time. It's like, no, he just bombed. Like, it's not like you're too good. It's not like that there's just not enough people here. No. He just wasn't that good.
No, he needed to reframe that in his mind. Oh, I bombed because they don't get me. I'm too good for them. That's why I bombed. It's not because I suck at this. It's not because I can learn something from these people or learn how to do this and have a good time.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, I'm just above them.
He just took it as, well, fuck these. I'm better than these people.
Or just like, you know, in terms of my own life, when I've been guilty of it, it's like the guys that are jocks and super muscly and shit and like work out. It's like, you know, those guys have redeeming qualities. They have discipline. They go to the gym every day, you know, and that's why chicks like them. Like, you know, I shouldn't hate those people. You know what I'm saying? It's like, they're not like worse than me. They're maybe not even dumber than me. They might be smart guys. It's like, I shouldn't have that perception, you know? It's just because I can't lift weights or I can't fucking do sports as well. That doesn't give me a right to have that opinion and that snobbishness. So I was talking shit on people at mics, and I just felt like I should point out an example for myself.
A vein. I love talking shit about people at mics.
Yeah,
that was definitely a reminder of why I don't go to mics that often.
But you know, it depends on how you do it, right? Because like if you talk shit to me and we're like friends, right? We've hung out. It's like, that's okay to talk shit to me. You know what I'm saying? But if you're just like sitting kind of by yourself or on a table and you're being kind of loud, it's like, fucking these people fucking suck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think there's a difference between relaying that to a friend versus like just kind of making it known that you feel that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just feel like what you probably did was just talk shit to a friend, you know? So I don't know if I'd put you in that.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm not even worried about that at all. I'm not even in the comedy scene, so I don't care. If someone, because I didn't even mention who it was. Who cares? I'm just saying there was somebody. Who cares, dude? There's a million people like that. I was one of them. It's at a certain point too. I used to be like that.
Yeah, like there's that. I don't know. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes in the Bible where it said like, if you curse your servant, forgive them because you've also cursed your servant and you've cursed others. You know, so it's like we're all guilty of that.
And
you know?
I get why I get where that guy was coming. I get why somebody would get pissed off at a shitty mic. Of course, I get it. But I'm here too. I've been doing it longer. I'm doing what I'm having a good time. So therefore, you're not right to think that it's the mic.
And like, there's also like being pissed that you're there at like a shitty open mic versus everybody here is shitty. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the funniest one.
Which also wasn't the case because he didn't do well.
Yeah, like, and they never fucking do, and I feel sorry for those people. Like, I have like this approachability to me.
Wait, so what is it? What is the situation where you're the What's this? Set up it again.
So,
When you're, what's the example?
well, okay. Well, I guess what I was going to just talk about is I feel sorry for those people who like are old and starting comedy, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, I feel like at a certain point, like if you're pursuing that dream, like that's a waste of fucking time. And you shouldn't do that. Like, there's a lot of that positive reinforcement of like, just go for your dreams. You're not too old. It's like, yeah, you're too old.
Yeah.
Like no one starts comedy when they're like 40. And like people have like approached me. Like I have this approachability where people like, what they really want is to have me help them write jokes. You know what I'm saying? Where they've never really tried it or never really done it, and they're old. And I just tell them the truth. I think you're too old.
Yeah.
Like, and if I'm wrong, right, then they're going to do it anyway. But if they let me influence them, they know I'm right. And that might be a little bit narcissistic on my part, but
Yeah. Well, it depends what their goals are. Like, if the only reason I think there is a benefit to do it, to learning how to do stand up, because it opens up your personality.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it translates into a lot of other jobs. Like if you want to be into advertisement or sales, like, just being that extroverted person and building that confidence. But I mean, everybody that I've spoken to, that's not their goals. You know?
Yeah.
It's
if
like,
they actually think they're going to get famous,
Yeah.
probably wouldn't encourage it. But if it's just to learn a new skill, yeah, maybe.
And I just have a hard time not like snapping at people because I've had like people who want to help me write jokes. Have you ever had that? And they don't do comedy, but they saw me on Kill Tony.
It's been a long time. Okay, if it's through Kill Tony, that explains it, because that's a bunch of dumbasses from the internet.
Yeah, exactly. No, if it's other comedians at like mics or whatever, even if I don't think they're funny, I appreciate that because at least they're there, they're trying it, and they just saw me perform.
Yeah, if it's just some fucking person from Instagram, I would not take that very kindly.
And the whole experience has just made me like really question if I want to be any level of famous, because I'm blunt with crazy people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like their problem was that they're like legitimately insane. Like, if you think that you who hasn't done comedy, right, can write jokes for me and you're that good, you're insane. You're insane to think I would even look at those jokes.
Yeah.
Well, like, because at one, it's like, I always say, like, if they ask, right, I just say, like, that puts me in a really, like, sketchy situation. Just like if, things fall out between us and you want to say I stole it or something like that, that's why I want to write my own jokes. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one. And then two, it's like, I kind of want to do this myself. Like, it's all about me growing as a person. I don't want to use other people as a crutch. And there's times where I've explained that, and then they say, "Oh yeah, but like these jokes are really funny," and it's like, no, you're fucking crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're crazy to think that, that I would fucking like in any way be interested in like reading your jokes,
Yeah, it wouldn't really be that interesting to me
And another thing, and you probably haven't dealt with this, but this is something that annoys me, is like they'll say things like, yeah, I want to try comedy because like I'm a badass alpha wolf and I'm like meant to do this, and like, yeah, hey, can you help me write jokes? And
they're not even a hot chick.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to gain from it whatsoever.
Exactly. But it's like, you're clearly not telling the truth about what you think of yourself, right? Because I think either A, they're not really these badass alpha wolves, they're insecure, which everybody is, right? Okay. Or B, they think I'm a beta male. You know what I'm saying? Like that's sort of like always it's like, you're honestly saying to me that you think I'm a beta male cuck that you can take advantage of. And you don't even realize what you're saying it, because by default, that's kind of what they're saying. And they don't really realize how obvious they're being with it.
I don't know. I'd have to see the full context, because I don't really see how that has to do with you being just because they call themselves that.
Because they're asking me for help. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or they want to start some type of writing partnership with me. That's why. Like, it's like...
Yeah.
It's
that's
like...
not how... On Instagram, if someone's contacting me on Instagram about comedy, it's usually for me to get something out of it, not just for me.
Do you think if someone says they're an alpha, that by default makes them not an alpha?
If anybody kind of uses that word and they're over the age of 30, I don't consider them a real person. I mean, I don't use that type of language, like non-ironically. to call yourself an alpha. You know?
But I'm just saying, like look at it in the animal hierarchy. It's like no one denies who the alpha wolf is. Everybody just knows. He doesn't have to prove it. He just is. Like, right?
Hierarchy, yeah.
It's like, and if you say it, you don't really think that about yourself. I feel like that's kind of like a contradiction.
Yeah, that's a retarded thing to say.
Yeah, it is. But
also, the act of contacting you in the pretense that they're contacting you is also part of why they're stupid too. So it doesn't even you don't really do that.
By the way, I've been holding my phone. I don't know why. I listened to it like 5 hours ago, like a video. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm sorry, I had my. That's a distraction. My bad. But I love this conversation, man.
Yeah,
like,
great talk.
Like again, like I really think that you gave me lots of good people to like look into and look at.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again, man. Yeah, it's like 2 hours, dude. That's good.
All right,
man.
fine.
Yeah,
we'll call it here then.
Yeah, because honestly, you're way over my. Like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like I've exhausted all my mental energy.
Do you want to sign it off?
Hey, this has been Jack Horner, and I've had a great time. I've learned a lot. I hope you have too. If you are interested, follow me on Instagram at Jack Horner Comedy. Just don't give me any joke ideas. I'm not in.
Yeah.
All right. Peace, guys.
All right, cheers, y'all.